Have you ever wondered how to share an active life with your dog without pushing them too far or second guessing every decision? Or found yourself wondering what running, movement, and recovery should actually look like when your dog's long term health is a priority? You are not alone, and that is exactly what we're diving into on today's episode of Tails and Tones. But before we dig in, one quick note. We've recently announced our very first Tails and Tones product, an elevated food and water system that is designed to support a healthier, more comfortable mealtime. And we are building it slowly and intentionally alongside our community and trusted experts. And if you'd like to be part of shaping it, you can actually join our founding pack via the link in our Instagram bio at Tails and Tones or in the show notes. Alrighty, let's dig in. Hi there, and welcome to Tails and Tones. I'm your host, Mariska Nell, also known as Piper's mom. Our guest today is someone that has honestly made me run more in life and enjoy it. And she is also a fellow dog mom, which we love all around here. She's an ultra running coach and the founder of She Runs Ultras, a podcast and online coaching community that really supports women, especially those that train for their first and furthest ultra marathon in a way that actually fits real life. Meghan has run everything from a 50K to 200 miles, giving her first-hand experience with the physical, mental, and logistical realities of ultra running. Through coaching, community, and very honest conversations about what training really requires, she helps runners stop second-guessing themselves, build confidence, and make smarter decisions so they can cross the finish line feeling strong, healthy, and proud. Please give a awesome welcome to today's guest, Meghan Gould. Meghan, welcome to the podcast.
I am super excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Mariska.
Oh, it's amazing having you here. And for our listeners who may be new to your work, could you maybe introduce yourself and share a little bit about what it is that you do?
Sure. My name is Meghan Gould, and I'm actually based over here in the USA, and more specifically, kind of in the northeast region of the United States. We just recently got a whole ton of snow, which is not something that you have in your neck of the woods. And I am an ultra running coach, and I primarily work with women who want to run their first or their farthest ultra. And just for context, an ultra is any distance over a marathon. So anything over 26.2 miles. And they're typically run on trails, on off-road surfaces versus streets. So yeah, that's like in a nutshell kind of what I do.
Yeah, awesome. And I was actually part of your community for a bit when I still had all of these very big dreams that's still very much alive, just bit postponed to run my first ultra. And yeah, it is really just amazing. I'm still running, just not as far, but we're getting there. But what is it that kind of got you into running?
Oh gosh, well, I played sports as a kid growing up. I did a lot of soccer. I played softball. I did gymnastics. And when I played softball all the way through college. And then when I graduated college, there wasn't a real place for me to go in terms of sports. And I tried playing in an adult softball league, but it didn't work out so well because they play a different kind of softball. They play slow pitch, and I'm used to fast pitch. So I it just did not it just did not go well. So I decided to just kind of continue going to the gym and lifting weights and doing that sort of thing. And then I just decided, well, I can't only do that. I really enjoy being outside. Let me just try this running thing. And running had always been something that I did as part of my sport for conditioning or for warm-ups, or, back in the day it was always get a little bit of punishment having to run your laps and do your thing. But eventually I just sort of really started to enjoy it. And then one day my brother challenged me to run a half marathon when I was living in Boston. And I was like, okay, fine. We'll totally do it. And it just sort of snowballed from there. He beat me, not by very much, but he did beat me. but that's how it got started. And then I ran road races for probably like 3 or 4 years. And I just got to the point where my body was not responding well to it. It was like my joints were hurting, my recovery time sucked. And I thought, well, there has to be a better way. And then one day I came across this article in Runner's World magazine about trail running and specifically ultras. And my mind was just like, what? I had no idea that these sorts of things existed. And then it was just the rest is history.
Oh, I love that. It's like one of those memes that you always see,
Yeah.
with the road runners, and then all of a sudden it's like, come join our cult here in the trail runs, and there you are.
Yes. Yes.
Oh
Absolutely.
my gosh. And I mean, you wear so many different hats. So you're an ultra runner, you are a coach, and you are a dog mom as well. How do all of these identities actually show up in your day to day right now?
I think they're like all a little intertwined. I don't know that you could necessarily like pick apart one versus the other. And that's sort of intentional too. What I have found over the years of training and owning dogs and having pets is like you have to kind of incorporate all the things. So not so much right now because the weather kind of stinks, but when the weather is better, I take my dogs with me. I'll typically use their walk as my warm up to my runs. And my younger one, he doesn't go too far with me, but I will take him on my runs with me to just make sure that he gets, enough exercise. But it's sort of like all those areas kind of bleed over into one another. I don't know that you could necessarily pull them apart and say, right now she's wearing her coach hat, unless, of course, obviously, like I'm on a coaching call, right? But
Yeah.
they all very much are intertwined.
You've done quite a few races and things like that. And when people kind of looking at like an ultra, that's kind of what people see. They see the race day, but they don't really see that kind of life behind it. Like, what does training for ultras actually look like when you're like balancing that still with like work, life, and then, being a dog mom?
Mm. I think it's kind of you have to get very good at well, multitasking, like I said, taking my dogs for their walk as part of my warm up or exercise, like taking my younger one with me on my runs. It looks like a lot of early mornings for me because that's when I tend to function better. Just like I'm an early riser, so I don't have a problem kind of getting up before the sun, getting out and, starting my day in that sense. So I think it really looks like a lot of multitasking, being really efficient with your time. It also kind of looks like a little bit of pre-planning and scheduling to make sure that not only are the dogs getting their walk and their playtime and all that stuff, but that I'm getting that same time too to do my dedicated training. Because as much as I want to take them with me all the time, my older one is old. She's just not in a position. She used to run with me when she was younger, but that's not something. So it's almost like they both need separate things. And sometimes we can all be on the same track together, but lots of times it's, my older one needs something, my younger one needs something, I need something. So there is a little bit of like pre planning and scheduling and some forethought that has to go into it to make sure that, everyone gets what they need.
And I mean, like you've just mentioned with Wyatt, we've seen on your social media as well, actually going on some of these runs with you.
Mhm.
And how did that kind of start? And what made you realize, like, he'd actually enjoy some of these running episodes with you?
Well, he's an Australian Shepherd, a mini Australian Shepherd, and they have a lot of energy. So he's actually my third Australian Shepherd, and I've run with all of our dogs at some point. We haven't ever gone more than 5 or 6 miles, maybe. My older one that passed away a few years ago, she's gone 10 miles, but it was more like a through hike, not so much a straight run. But he just had so much energy that, a basic walk around the neighborhood is not going to cut it. And if I did that, then I'd have to do so many of those over the course of a day that it would just eat up a chunk of time. So going back to what you were asking before, it's just more time efficient if I can just take him with me and run, and he can kind of get his crazies out, as I say. And then he can come home and kind of, just chill out um, and not have so much energy and not bounce off the walls.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And yeah, because for me as well, obviously, we've got a French bulldog. And let me tell you, they are not the ideal dog to go marathon training or ultra training. So
Yes.
Piper joins some of my runs, but she's in her stroller. So that means, I get, I don't know what that is in pounds, but it's about 26 kilos of extra weight because she weighs about 12 kilos. And then the stroller is 14. And we don't go very far because it is still for her, it's exercise because, her core is exercising as the stroller goes, up and down different surfaces and
Yeah.
things. But it's definitely a thing that she loves. She always likes to go in the stroller. And yeah, it gives us that little bonding time. And so our nearest park is probably about just over 1 mile. So I get to run there and then she gets to walk on the grass, enjoy herself. And then, I can run back. And then I get about 2 miles in and, she gets some nice grass. So it's like a win-win, but definitely not the dog of choice for if you
No.
want to go for long runs.
No, and I
Unless you
think
want
that's
to do
important. You have
kettlebell,
to,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, you do have to choose accordingly, right? And I think that's one of the things about having a dog like an Australian Shepherd. And it's funny, before we started recording, I was explaining to you how we named our other dog. So my husband rides a lot of bikes, and we used to go to a lot of bike races, and I would bring the dogs with me. And because they are Aussies, because they have that kind of like interesting color and look to them, so many people would gravitate towards us and be like, "Oh, those are amazing dogs. I want one of those dogs." And my running joke, but it really is true, I've talked a lot of people out of getting an Aussie because they think they want them because they're so cool and they're so smart. But the flip side is, like, they're so super smart and they need a lot of exercise. And I actually had one gentleman come back to me a few weeks later because doing these bike races, it's like its own little, tribe or group of people. So we would see the same people at multiple races. I had this one gentleman come back up to me and say, "Hey, I talked it over with my family, and based on my conversation with you, we've actually decided not to get an Aussie." And I was like, "Oh, that's probably a smart decision," just based on what he told me about,
Yeah.
being busy and working and having kids who were school aged and doing sports. And it's just like, unless you're going to put in the time to train and to exercise, like, that's probably not going to be the best dog for you. Sad to say, because they are very cool dogs, but they're not for everyone.
Yeah, I've talked so many people out of French bulldogs as well. So, like, it's really, really great to understand the breed before you actually get one and to make sure. And I was shocked at some of the distances that some dog breeds can actually go. Like, I
Yeah.
think you pronounce it like the Vizsla.
Hmm.
That dog is like phenomenal. Actually, one of our editors, he's got one, and they can go like, 10 to 12 miles to
Hmm.
run that distance with you. So if that's something that, you're keen on, and like the Rhodesian Ridgeback, that's about,
Yes.
I think they also do about, they can easily do like 10 miles,
Hmm.
So yeah, so if that is kind of your goal, then, yes, maybe get that. But you must remember, if
Hmm.
you kind of fall out of love with running, that dog still needs running. So
Yes. Yes. Just as a
yeah.
funny aside, my brother, who I mentioned earlier, who challenged me to run the half marathon, he in the last couple of years has kind of come back around full circle and has started to run marathons. And he's done a few of them, and they have a wire-haired pointing griffon. I'm not sure if you're
Oh,
familiar with
wow.
these dogs,
Yeah.
but her name is Lemon, and she does all of the training with my brother. And I think the farthest that she's run is 22 miles. And
Wow.
like, she is legit probably I mean, she pulls a lot, and my brother has a very specific harness for her to run with. But I mean, she doesn't even bat an eye. She just goes.
Oh, wow. That is the most ideal running buddy, I think.
Yes.
When you want to stop, like they keep on going. And
Yes.
I mean, for some of our listeners that might be curious, like, you've mentioned some of the distance, but like, what are kind of the distances that you feel is appropriate? Like now, obviously, Wyatt is still, a little bit younger. Yeah, what type of distances would you do with him? And, how do you decide, okay, this
Mm.
is kind of what we're going to do, and I don't think he can do anymore.
His issue isn't necessarily that he can't do more. He starts to fall apart at the seams. Like he just gets distracted. He gets a little silly. He just starts to, kind of his attention wanders. So the farthest that I have gone with him is 6 miles, I think. And right around the 4.5 to 5 mile mark, he starts to, like, the wheels start to come off. And it's just a little bit more challenging for me to keep him running in a straight line and to keep him going. We do a fair amount of stopping and starting in the first mile, and then the middle sort of is really smooth. He's very happy to run along very nicely with me. And then, like I said, as we start to hit the 4.5 to 5 miles, he just is over it. He's just bored, I think. And so
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily that he couldn't go farther. I really do think that he could. It just he gets bored. So maybe at some point I'll take him farther than that. But, we had to work up to that to start with. It started with walks around the, neighborhood. We walking up to this specific intersection from our house is a mile. And so I just started that way, like taking him on the walks. And then to get him to learn how to run with me, I would just do short bursts of easy jogging because, of course, their inclination is to want to jump and pull in front of you. And, they're all excited because they see you running. And so we just started very slowly. And I just, worked up to 2 miles of walk run. And then we'd go 2.5. And just, I just tried to gauge it based on how interested he was, and then how much of, like, how hard he crashed, so to speak, like afterwards, like how much of a nap he needed, if he exhibited any signs of like being sore or limping or anything like that. And I always tried to keep it very easy for him. I never wanted to overdo it too quickly because that's always my fear, especially with when you have a puppy, right? Starting them very slowly so that you're not harming their bone formation in any way, that you're giving them time to, like, acclimate to it.
And I think that is really important, even for us as, humans. Like, you're not going to wake up today and be like, oh, I think I should go and run a marathon. I'm just going to
Yes.
do that today. You kind of slowly also build up. And I think, I mean, I'm not a vet, I'm not like a professional, but I can imagine also those first like kind of 18 months when, the dog is still growing, it is still developing. That might also not be the best time to have them go and run like, 10 miles. So
Right.
it is gradually building up to that. So I'm really like, I appreciate you kind of said that so that, our listeners can also kind of, follow that and maybe get their own training journey as well
Mm-hmm.
started. For anyone that's kind of keen on, I want to go run with my dog, is there any like gear that you consider like essential, especially for like trails and like longer efforts
Mm.
that you use?
I don't know that I think that there's any one piece that's very essential. I've had, 3 different dogs now. Have taught 3 different dogs to sort of run. Each one has, they're different. They each have their own personality. Some are better with recall, some are not. Some stick close to you. So I think the thing for me is having a good kind of harness as opposed to a collar to, because
Mm,
running with a dog sometimes can be tricky because sometimes they'll run to the end of their leash and you don't want to necessarily keep yanking.
mm.
They're running, the force is just too much. So having a good fitting harness that you can attach the leash to on the back. What I do with Wyatt oftentimes is I'll do his harness and then I do a very long flexi, a very sturdy, not one of these flexis that has the super thin cords,
Oh, yeah.
something that's a little thicker, the wider webbing. because he tends to want to go up and come back and up and come back. And so rather than me getting my arm yanked out by him pulling and then circling back to me, I just give him a little bit of slack to let him run up and then I'll catch up to him. Sometimes he'll want to stop and sniff something, so I can just sort of hold the leash behind me, give him some slack behind me, call him, and he can catch up to me. So the run for me is relatively seamless, but for him,
Yeah.
there's a lot of starting and stopping. So, and that might work for some people. Some people might want a fixed length leash, and the flexi is not possible, especially if your dog tends to like go around the tree, that it just is a
Oh,
matter of
yeah.
figuring out. To be fair, I did start out running with him on a fixed 6 foot length leash because he wasn't he wasn't authorized to be on the flexi yet. He had not earned that privilege. So I think it a good harness is probably like the one essential piece, that something that
Mm.
is built for that, versus like an outfit type of a harness. You know what I mean? Like something
Yeah,
that's like built for running versus decoration. That's the best
exactly.
explanation I can come up with.
Yeah. And do you kind of have like the leash in your hand when you run, or do you have it connected to like a belt or
Yeah, I hold it. I did at one point have, with my first Aussie, I had one of those belts that had sort of the bungee.
mm,
It was a fixed length, but it was a bungee. So my oldest, Ruby, who has since passed away, but she would. I didn't love that one. I think that's how I eventually evolved into this setup with the harness and the flexi, which can sometimes be a pain in the butt because you do have to hold it. But I think it gives me a little bit more control, and it gives him more freedom because I can stop and start it and, give him more or less based on what I need. And then when we're running, I also carry just a regular old fixed length leash just in case that one breaks or in case we encounter a situation that I need more control than the flexi will give me. But so that's just how I like to run it.
and are there any like kind of hard rules that you personally follow when it comes to like, the heat or terrain or even hydration and
Mm.
also maybe some recovery for your dogs?
Hmm. I tend not to take him out on, well, first of all, I don't really do heat. I think once it starts to get into like the 70s, that for me gets really warm, 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So that gets warm for me. So I know for him that that's also going to be warm. So
Mm,
I'll try to take him, if I am going to go, it'll probably be more of a walk run versus a straight out run. I'll try to take him someplace that's got more tree cover so that we're not in the blazing sun. And I think, like, sometimes he does have a hiking vest, so like a backpack with the kind of like with the two saddlebags. So sometimes if we're going on a longer effort, I will have him wear that, and sometimes he carries his own water. I started doing that because I thought it would help to wear him out. It didn't. It had zero effect on him. So sometimes if we are just walking, I'll make him wear that and then carry his water so he has a little bit of extra resistance. But I'll usually carry lots of extra water. He does he does tend to. I have a little bowl for him, but sometimes, as you will know, but in ultra running, sometimes we wear backpacks, a hydration vest that's got what we would call a bladder. So it's like a big pouch that has a hose attached to it, and you can just sort of pull it to your mouth and suck and get the water that you need. I have actually gotten to the point with him that I'll just hold the hose open and it's sort of like a little water fountain, and he'll just kind of
oh,
drink from it's only water. I don't use any hydration mix in it, but he also has a bowl, and I'll bring an extra bottle in my pack for him, a soft flask with extra water. So, yeah, I'm always trying to make sure that, again, I'm not doing too much or taking him too far. And if he starts to really show signs of fatigue, like the real open mouth, long tongue type of panting, either we walk it or we call for an extraction. Sometimes, if it gets too hot, sometimes I'll just call my husband and say, "Can you come get us?"
oh, that's amazing. And I know you kind of had those flies or something that
Oh,
stung. Like, what
yes.
are they called again?
They're called deer flies, and they're these, if you think about like like a black fly, but they're a little bit bigger and they bite hard. They, if they really make contact with you, they can leave a pretty decent sized welt and it's very,
Oh,
very itchy. And typically in the fall around here, they start to ramp up. The conditions just start to be prime for them. And they also really love the woods. And so I kind of live, as I like to say, like out in the middle of nowhere. So I mostly run, dirt back roads and houses are kind of few and far between. So these deer flies, they love those conditions. And there's just this one stretch where no matter what, I'm always running and swatting and flailing my arms and, so if it's going to be that kind of a day, I won't in that type of year, I won't take him because they will also they just get all up in your face, they bite his
oh gosh.
ears. It's just not the most conducive
Yeah.
conditions to be running in.
And like kind of looking back, is there anything that you do differently or you wish you'd known earlier about, some of these tips and tricks you've picked up about running with your dog?
Oh gosh. I don't think so. I think, you know, I did do my sort of due diligence, my research ahead of time. When I decided that I was going to get an Aussie, to know what their breed was all about, and I also did a fair amount of research on, okay, how do you exercise a dog? Because if you've never had a dog before, going back to what you said earlier, like, oh, you just think they're dogs. That's what they're supposed to do. And yes, that's true. They are supposed to run and, get lots of exercise and whatnot, but they have to build up to it. And so I bought this book. I can't remember who the author is, but it's called The Puppy Whisperer. And it's such a good book. And I've read it I think I've reread it with every single puppy that we've gotten just as like a refresher, but it's so good at just explaining all of these things, the do's and don'ts. And so I felt pretty prepared going into it, right? And I knew that I would have to build up over time. So I really just tried to take it easy, do lots of walks and play in the yard or at a park on a soft surface. And then, when they showed me that this wasn't cutting it anymore, that they needed more exercise, then I started to just slowly introduce the running intervals and teach them how to run on a leash. So I don't think that there's anything I wished I had known. Maybe the only thing would be that, again, this is Aussie specific, but that they were going to need a little more guidance, a little more training. Like it was going to take a little bit longer than perhaps I thought it was going to get them to run in a straight line,
Yeah.
to be able to actually like execute your run. Because some of these earlier runs, I use air quotes, runs, I would get a little frustrated because I'd be like, "What the heck? Like, why can't we? You run so well over here. Like, why can't we? Distractions and smells and other people." So I had some preconceived notions about how I was just going to be able to go out and do this run, and really, what I should have said to myself was like, "This is a training session where you might also run." It's
Yeah.
like flip the two things around.
And like, what do you wish more runners actually understood about, like that flexibility, consistency, and also just like letting go of that perfection,
Mm.
especially like when you are training for like ultras and, life in between?
I think, well, you touched on it a lot, which is just that there's a lot of flexibility that's required. I think a lot of it comes down to kind of what we touched on earlier in terms of pre-planning and scheduling and, just making sure that you're allotting the actual amount of time that you need to do your run and then to shower and change and move on with the rest of your day. It's not just this like seamless transition from one to the other. So if you can give yourself a little bit of like grace and flexibility to kind of work through, especially if you're just starting out, you've never done this before, it's going to take a little bit to figure out, okay, how long does it take me to do this run or this workout and then move on with my day, or to drive to the place that I'm going to do the run at and then come back and do whatever. When you do that, when you give yourself that space and that time to kind of figure it out, everything on the back end starts to get a little bit more efficient because now it's sort of, oh, I just know that if I go here, it takes this long. If I'm running this far, it takes this long. but a lot of people are really hot to trot to like get it all ironed out within the first week. And as you know too, it takes time, and with your schedule constantly changing, and if you live someplace where the seasons change, like that's going to kind of mess with your flow a little bit too. So it's less about it being really rigid and things, always lining up perfectly, and more about finding a little bit of flow. And if you get kind of knocked off your schedule, how do you quickly right the ship? And even if that means you're doing some fraction of the workout that you were supposed to do, that's still, as you know, something is better than nothing, right? So
Yeah.
just trying to like bob and weave your way, so to speak, through your training, it's better than it being an all or nothing type of a situation.
Exactly. And I feel, kind of the best thing for me has been to do the time blocks and to make
Mhm.
sure every Sunday I kind of looked at my week that went past and I was like, oh, yeah, I did plan this, didn't go according to plan. Why didn't it go according to plan? Okay, let's try next week. Yes, I should have actually scheduled. I am going to take a half an hour to shower, get ready, after training before I move on to the next thing. And yeah, I didn't do that. So then half of the stuff didn't get done. Or, plan for stuff that needs like I feel I'm super, super like, a ninja of everything from 5:30 in the morning till 11. So I cannot do my training between those times because that is when I have so much like brain power to get stuff solved. But if I do my training afterwards, then, I'm good. And then
Mhm.
I've got the bulk of my stuff done. So it's like figuring out all those things and then, just like see each week, what did I do and how can I improve that for the next week? And then gradually you'll get somewhere that's like getting
Yeah.
stuff done.
Yeah, I think that's super important. I like what you said about going back and reviewing the week too. Things are always going to take longer than you probably think or estimate. So sometimes scheduling some like overage or just extra time. I'm definitely guilty of being someone who doesn't like to have free time on their schedule because I feel like there's something I could be doing with it. But 9 times out of 10, when I don't, give myself a 15-minute buffer or a 30-minute buffer here or there, the whole schedule gets implodes because I've overscheduled myself, and then nothing gets done well. I feel like I did a terrible job, and it's just a cycle that repeats itself. But if you can kind of give yourself a little bit more realistic time frame, I think you're going to be much more successful.
Oh, that's amazing. And I mean, you train so many women trying to get that either, first ultra in or even, getting that first marathon kind of length. And, for some of the runners, like me, for example, saying that that marathon is still coming,
Mhm.
just not right now. What advice do you give about, staying connected to that goal without, putting additional pressure on yourself?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think, especially women, we tend to be pretty hard on ourselves in terms of like setting goals and keeping a pretty strict timeline and, not quote unquote failing and, not achieving that goal. I think that, again, it's probably going to take longer than you initially think, especially if it's your first time through. And if you, for some reason, have to bail and not run the race, maybe you get injured or maybe you have some sort of like family event that happens, that's not a failure. That's just, life circumstances. And maybe there was something that you could have done differently in your training from the perspective of injury, but you probably can't always control family circumstances or job or weather or something like that. So I think it's more about enjoying the process of training and enjoying running for the sake of running rather than just to do this one race. But what I have found, not only in myself, but the women that I have worked with, is if you learn to embrace and enjoy the process of running and all the other things too, right? Because we talk a lot about movement and mobility and strength training and rest and all those things. If you can just enjoy that stuff and find a way to incorporate it, like kind of going all the way back to what we talked about at the very beginning, incorporate it into your life, not because you have to do it, but because you enjoy it and you know that doing that stuff is going to help you be healthy and, give you a little bit of an edge in terms of longevity and strength and staving off, illness, then that's what you should do. And it's for that versus a medal or a t-shirt or whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with those things, but I think you'll feel more fulfilled and more confident and more proud of yourself if you're chasing the process versus chasing the prize. So,
Yeah. And it makes that journey kind of so much more enjoyable. And
yeah,
I'm so glad you kind of talked about the movement because, in one of our recent episodes, we had Dr. Laurie McCulley on, and she actually, was the person that invented the water treadmill for dogs, which was so cool.
that's
And
awesome.
something that you believe in very much is a daily shakedown. And there
Yes.
has been times where I do not do my daily shakedown. And yeah, it had ended me up in physio and with back pain. So now the first thing I do in the morning is my daily shakedown. And maybe some of our listeners are like, what is this? I'm not familiar with this. Can you explain to us, like, what is the daily shakedown? And also, do you maybe have some like exercises you also do with the dogs, some
Oh, that's a good
stretching
question.
routines?
So the daily shakedown is just like it's a term that I coined back when I was having I had a lot of sciatic pain in my right hip, and it ended up with me on my living room floor, unable to get up because I was just in so much pain. And so after I was able to kind of extract myself from that situation, I sort of made a little promise to myself that I would figure this out. Like I had been kind of dealing with that pain for a long time. And so over the course of the next, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, I just started experimenting with a lot of different things like mobility and yoga and this and that. And I kind of landed on this thing that I call the daily shakedown, which is kind of a combination of what people would visually recognize as some yoga poses or stretches and some functional range conditioning type of joint mobility kind of merged together. And so I like to say it's a 5 to 10 minute practice that you can do at any point in the day. A lot of people do get a lot of really great results if you do it first thing in the morning because it does help to sort of like wake you up and prime you up for whatever it is that you're going to do. So it's a 5 to 10 minute movement practice that kind of goes head to toe. And there isn't any formal prescription for how to do it, like what order. But the basic guideline is you just want to kind of run through all of your muscles and joints and take them through their greatest pain free range of motion. And so you could start from the bottom and work up. You could start from the top and work down. You could focus just on the spots that are giving you like the most trouble. And that can be used, like I said, at the very beginning of the day. I try to encourage my clients to do it as part of their pre-run routine to make sure that they really are primed and ready to go. But you could also do it last thing before bedtime to help you wind down as well.
I love that. And I am going to link one of your YouTube videos as well in there
Yeah.
of your daily shakedown. So for anyone, go to the show notes and you can find the daily shakedown there. I'm definitely doing it now daily. So
Yes.
yeah. And what type of stretches do you do for your dogs? Is there any specific ones?
No, when
Are we gonna
the
have a daily shakedown for them coming, pending,
that would be
pending?
that would be awesome. I do have to say, the second that I roll out my yoga mat, which is typically where I do my daily shakedown in my office here, Wyatt is like right there. Anytime I roll out the yoga mat, he's just right there. And he just kind of instinctively does a little bit of, his own little down dog, up dog kind of routine.
Oh.
I haven't really explored doing any stretches with him. He seems to be really good about kind of self stretching. He just sees the mat and that for him is like a trigger, like, oh, mom's going to stretch. We're going to stretch. I'm going to get down on the ground. He'll lay on the ground and, do like the full body stretch type of
Oh.
thing. It's pretty funny to watch when I roll out the mat. He's like a moth to a
Yeah.
flame. He just goes right for it.
Yeah, we've actually, so Piper's obvious, she's been to the physio and she's had some, neck issues and back issues. So we've got like a whole list of exercises that we've been
Oh,
doing. So she's actually been going to the gym downstairs in our building. And then, people are like, oh my gosh, this dog's actually training in the gym. And I'm like, yes, we're training. We're both training in the gym. So she does some core exercises there to strengthen her core so we can make sure she doesn't have any more spinal issues. So,
yeah, that's
yeah,
important.
exactly. And I mean, for a lot of our dog loving runners that's listening to this episode, what is the biggest piece of advice that you can give someone who wants to share their running life with their dog safely, thoughtfully, and joyfully?
I would say just make it fun, make it fun for them and for you. So, going to places that are fun and safe, obviously, and interesting, whether that's a new trail or a new, place to go hiking or a new part of town to go running in, a new park or something like that. I think that's the part. I think if you keep doing the same places, the same roads, the same trails, it's going to get, boring for you. And you have to
Mm.
imagine it's probably going to get boring for them. So I do try to keep it consistent with the places that we go, but then every once in a while I'll throw in a different spot to, and I know that they like to, jump on the rocks and splash in the puddles and, do all that fun stuff. So I just try to make it fun for both for them and for me.
And so, talking about stuff for you as well, what like every year, I know obviously being in your coaching program, we pick some races that we are training for the year and, prepping for. What are some of those races that is kind of on your schedule for this coming year?
So, as a group, my coaching group, we are going to do two different races this year here in the States. One is out in Arizona in June, and it's actually going to be a nighttime run through the desert, just west of Phoenix. So, I'm super excited about that one. Both of these races have different distances that are part of the event. So when people are going, they can make the decision. So the Arizona race, there are 4 or 5 different distances, everything from 6K all the way up to 52K. And then, so we're going to do that one in June. And then in November, we're going down to Tennessee to do another race. And this one has a little bit higher. So 25K, 50K, 50 miles, 100K, and 100 miler too. So
Wow.
we're gonna travel as a group. Not everybody is going to both races, but a good portion of the crew, as I call them, are coming to Arizona, and a good portion of the crew is coming to Tennessee as well. So I'm super excited about that.
Yeah. And are we going to see you at Moab? Are you going
This
to be
year?
at, yeah.
No, not this year. No, I no. Maybe 2027 we will see, but not this year. I think partially because of these two races that I just mentioned,
Mm.
and last year was really challenging for me. So if people don't know, I actually did not finish the Moab 240 last year, which is why Mariska's asking me if I'm going to do it this year. And I decided that 2026 I would not do it because I really did want to focus on my coaching group. We had this idea to travel as a group kind of in the works for a couple years. And it's one thing to train for a 50K, but the race that Mariska's talking about is 240 miles. So that's a whole other beast of a thing
Yeah.
to do. And I was, going back to kind of what we were talking about in terms of allotting the appropriate amount of time when I was looking at my schedule and thinking about, okay, how am I going to coach these women? We're going to travel to these races. How am I going to do my training too if I wanted to attempt 240 miles again? And I just decided it was not in the cards for 2026. So maybe we will revisit it for 2027. But even if I want to do it in 2027, it's a lottery. So I may not get in. So you have to enter
Yeah.
the lottery in order to be considered to do this race.
Oh, wow. Well, we are definitely going to root for you for all those races.
Thank you.
And Megan, where can people find you?
I am all over at She Runs Ultras. So Facebook, Instagram. I am making a run at TikTok, no pun intended. And it's in its infancy. I think I maybe have like 150 followers over there. So, if you're on TikTok, be kind. I just don't know that platform as well as I know Facebook and Instagram. But Instagram is my primary medium. So if you want to follow along with all the shenanigans, it's at She Runs Ultras.
Awesome. And they can also listen to your podcast as well,
Yes.
which we will link all in the show notes. Meghan, thank you so much for being such an amazing guest and just sharing your joy of running with, your dogs as well with our audience. And hopefully we see a lot more runners. So if you are going out on a run this week and taking your dog with you, take a photo and make sure to tag us. We would definitely love to see that as well. So
Absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was super fun. I love talking about running, but it's so fun to get to incorporate talking about running and my dogs as well.
Oh, that's two of my favorite things. So, thank you. Thank you so much for our amazing guest, Meghan, for joining us. This conversation really felt like a good reminder that care for ourselves and for our dogs is built in small, thoughtful choices made over time, from running and recovering to daily movement and paying attention to what our dogs are telling us. It's not about doing more. It's about doing what lasts. Meghan, thank you so much for being here and sharing your experience and your perspective and a glimpse into life with Velo and Wyatt. Thank you, our listeners, for tuning into this episode of Tales and Tones. And if today's episode spoke to you, please do leave us a review on podchaser.com. Or if you can think of a fellow pet parent that might love this too, please do share it with them. If you've got a question or just want to come and say hi, you can always find me around on Instagram at Tales and Tones, where every tale tells a story and every tone speaks from the heart. See you in the next one.